Okay, everybody. Thank you for coming, and it's very nice to see that the room is almost completely filled up, so we appreciate that very much. First, we'd like to introduce each other here. My name is Howard, WB2UZE. I am one of the founders of the Long Island CW Club, and it's really my honor to have this opportunity to present here today. We've never presented really in a live audience this large before, and it's very exciting. And I have my partners in crime here today.
I am Jim, W6JIM. I hail from the Bay Area near San Francisco, California. I've been a ham radio operator for 27 years. I've been a member of the LICW Club for about 6 years and a teacher for about 5 years.
Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike, November 1, Charlie. I made a chance QSO one day operating remote. This guy answered. He sent me a QSL card. He said, hey, you should join this at Long Island CW Club. I never heard of Long Island CW Club, and 5 years later, here we are at Dayton.
You know, I just wanted to say something about our experience. The last time I was here at Dayton was about 10 years ago, and that was long before Zoom. And you know, when you would meet somebody for the first time, usually you just had a photograph back then, and most of the time they never looked like their photograph. But I really have to say that Zoom, which we use exclusively, is very accurate. And everybody that I had seen on Zoom, and I actually met these two fellows for the first time, they really look like they do on Zoom. So this time we really didn't have any surprise, and if somebody came up to our table where we were in Building 4, I knew who they were without a doubt before they even said their name. So it was very, very interesting. Okay, so I think we're ready to start, and Jim is going to run our media today. So take it away, Jim.
I believe it is a primitive form of communication known as Morse code.
You're right. I'm on a lot of practice. That's an S.
A T.
A. N. D. End of word.
Stand.
New word. B. A.
C. K. Back. Stand back.
Stand back.
Well, those who know me and our club, we're very big Star Trek fans. So Jim found that on the internet, and we thought it would be very appropriate. The CW that they're banging there is actually real, but the fist sounds more like some of the 10-year-olds that we have in the club, you know? So it needs a little bit of work. So we're here today to do a presentation on a fun and new way to learn Morse code, and we stress the word fun. So why CW in today's high-tech world? Why would anybody want to learn such a skill? Well, there's a number of drivers that bring people into our club, but the top ones are the following: SOTA and POTA. Summit's on the air, Park's on the air. All the young people want to do CW outside in the fresh air. They want to operate out on top of mountains. And this is very exciting today. So when you're operating outside, what's better? To have a CW rig that's this big, like the size of a pack of cigarettes? Or do you want to lug up to the top of a mountain, a computer, and a bigger rig to do sideband and be able to do digital? So CW is really very efficient at low power and with compromised antennas. So a lot of people want to learn that. And another thing we find out today is that people are getting tired of all the immediacy of our society. Everything is immediately on your phone, and CW is a very romantic yet efficient way to communicate. So it has quite an attraction. And there are many people that wanted to learn CW years ago when it was required, 20-something years ago. And because it's no longer forced on us, they're coming back and they want to learn, and a lot of these people now are retiring and they have extra time, and this is driving a lot of membership to us. So it's really wonderful that there's a resurgence, and on something that people thought was going to disappear is coming back. As a matter of fact, the Navy is still using CW now because it can't be hacked. And there was an article out that passed around on our group's IO. The Russians are still using it in the Ukraine. I didn't get a chance to read the article, but they're still using it. So it's with us, and it's good. Okay, Jim, what's next?
There's lots of different ways to learn CW. Of course, you can self-study, and a lot of us have tried that, and some have succeeded and some have failed. There's formal classes. We teach a formal class at LICW. CW Ops teaches a formal class, and a lot of ham radio clubs across the United States teach formal classes. You could just learn the characters yourself and just get right on the air. That's kind of what I did back in '96 whenever I got my ticket, and I learned CW. I didn't have really anybody to teach me, so I just learned the characters, and then I just listened to it on the air, and then just answered the first QSO that I felt was slow enough, and just kind of repeated back what they sent to me and kind of learned it that way. But no matter what you choose, through daily practice and persistence, you can succeed.
Straight key or paddle? What do you choose to learn? Now, if you put this question out on a forum like QRZ.com or eHam, you'd get 10,000 answers and a big headache trying to read through it. So what's our take on it? We recommend the use of a straight key. And why? We feel there's a better mind-to-hand connection when you're making the dots and dashes yourself. When you use an electronic device, it's a totally different feel, and your brain is not being used the same way as if you're actually using your wrist. Now, there are some cases where people, because they have carpal tunnel or some other disabilities, wouldn't be able to use a straight key. And of course, if they want to use a paddle, an electronic keyer, that's fine. We believe you should wait till at least 18 words a minute to use an electronic device, because that's about the speed that you start knocking on the door of head copy, and you have to move a little bit faster. As far as bugs go, which there's a nice picture of, bugs are very complicated devices, and they take a lot of skill, and we also would like our students to wait till after 18 words a minute, which is about where you're mastering the code to be able to do that. Now, are we cast in stone on this? And if you come to us and say, you know, I want to learn on a key, or I have a key, or I don't want to get a straight key in this, that's your decision. This is just our recommendation after years of teaching. But we're not cast in stone. The decision is yours.
All right, fear of CW. This is my slide because the reason I came to LICW was because of my fear of CW and getting on the air. Before I came to LICW, I had been operating for CW for many years, but I had to take a break. I was in the military, and towards the end of my career, I got really busy, and I had to take about a 6-year break. And whenever I retired in 2015 and looked for LIC and found LICW about 3 years later, I remembered the characters, but for the life of me, I could not remember the protocol, the back and forth, the sentence structure you use on the air. And I was afraid, after 30 years in the military, we're not allowed to make mistakes, and I didn't want to make a mistake on the air. And I shouldn't have felt that way, because none of us are perfect. And so we learned, I know what it means, and we all know what it feels like to be afraid to get on the air and make a mistake. But we have a cure in LICW, and I call it EFF. Now let's see if I can remember what EFF stands for. Education. First of all, we teach you what's going to happen in the QSO. We teach you what's going to be coming to you on the first exchange and what's expected of you on the first exchange. We teach what's going to be coming to you on the second exchange and what's going to be expected of you to send on the second exchange. So with that education, that kind of removes a lot of the unknown, which removes a lot of the fear. The second thing is friendship. In our classes, we work together. We're all about the same. Our classes, everyone's about at the same level. So we're all learning together, and we form friendships. I formed a friendship with Howard and Mike without ever meeting them before, and it was great to meet them here on this trip. So once you become friends and get to know the people that's in your classrooms, you're not afraid to make a flub or make a mistake in front of them. It just becomes part of learning. And the last thing is fun. We keep our classes fun and light. You know, we're not pushing anything hard on you, and we keep a lot of levity in the classrooms. And we have a lot of classes that are, in fact, we have one class that's called Fun Friday, and it's a lot of fun, believe it or not. So through those ways, that's our way of breaking through that fear factor that people have of getting on CW. What do you think, Howard?
Well, I agree with you, Jim. And you know, I got in the air with CW in 1965. When we were in junior high school, nobody was ever scared to get on the air. You just did it. I mean, there was no like extra telephone in the house or extra TV to watch. You wanted to communicate, you get on the air, right? So when I started this club 5 years ago, I'm starting to hear about people being afraid to get in the air. I just didn't understand it. But it was very, very deep and very pervasive. So I said, we got to do something about this. So we structured the entire club to make it friendly and welcoming and never in a way that anybody would feel intimidated or criticized. No one's ever allowed to say anything on Groups.io or to anybody directly that would be offensive. And one thing we never allow anybody to say is the word "I'm sorry." A few years ago, we had a young lady that joined the club, and she's sending, and every time she makes a mistake, she says, "I'm sorry." You know, another couple of letters, makes a mistake, "I'm sorry." I heard this on Zoom. I said, "What's going on here?" I said, from now on, in Long Island CW Club, you're never allowed to say you're sorry. That person right now is an advanced operator sending at 30 words a minute. So that's what we created, and that's some of the tenets that we believe in. What's next, Jim?
All right, getting on the air. We believe it's very important to get on the air as soon as possible. Even before you master CW, we want you to get on the air, master CW as you're on the air and as you're learning on the air. It's important because if the longer you wait for something, you know how it is, you put something off and you try to get perfect, and pretty soon you're never going to be good enough to get on the air. And that fear, or that the fear that you might have that has built up for getting on the air will just get worse and worse, and pretty soon all you're doing is using the computer, and then you're not getting on the air. So we try to get our students on the air as quick as possible. I think we do it, in about 3 months, Howard? Mm-hmm. We get them on the air for their first contact. And I want to talk a little bit about QSO protocol. When I talked about education before, one of the things that we teach as first you learn the characters, then you learn different protocols for getting on the air. And then we also teach what I call a standard QSO protocol, which is the long call sign exchange. I call it it's the original QSO format. To me, and you'll see we have this musical note up on the screen, because there's a back and forth. And whenever you learn the QSO protocol and both operators know it and do it right, it's like a perfect back and forth. It's just like, to me, it's like music. It's like if you see a tennis match where people are just going back and forth, perfectly. Or if it's QRQ, maybe it's like Olympic-style ping pong, really back and forth, really fast. But in any case, I imagine it kind of like if you ever watch a professional ballroom dancing, where each partner knows exactly what they have to do. Everything is in sync. And when I hear a nice QSO that's not speeded or not rushed, and people follow the proper protocol, it's really, the rhythm of it is, to me, is just like listening to beautiful music. Howard, what do you say?
Well, that's right, Jim. And one example I like to give, for any of you that have studied another language, let's say you studied Spanish, and that's not your native tongue. If somebody who is speaking Spanish to you is speaking very clearly and slowly, you're going to be doing much better. If they're yakking away and you really don't understand and you don't have any of the words, your speaking is not going to be that good. So what Jim was explaining, when there's a beautiful back and forth between two CW operators that are in sync, the QSO really flows. And that's when you know you've made some good success. Okay. I'll introduce Mike. I thought maybe you were waiting for him to speak, but he's got a bigger part in the second half of this. I'll say just a word or two about head copy before we turn it over. I used to teach the head copy class, but we've changed our curriculum around, which we'll talk about later, and now we have moved it down. Mike will talk to you about it. Head copy, we got a lot of questions on this. It's a very personal thing, very personal, and people do it in different ways. I happen to head copy in 5 different ways at the same time. And when I found out that none of my students except Mike's daughter does that, I decided we got to do something else and teach another way. But if you are head copying or you're having problems, don't worry about it because it's a difficult thing. It'll get there eventually, but it doesn't happen overnight. Mike, you want to explain how we have it in the curriculum?
We'll talk about it more in a little bit here, but head copy is the crown jewel of CW proficiency. It is the ability to not only copy, but to understand what is being sent as it's being copied without the need to write anything down. Very few CW operators achieve this level of proficiency. The majority of CW operators have to write down what they copy and then go back and read it to understand what was sent. There are no historical documents related to how to learn head copy, let alone how to teach head copy. But as Howard mentioned, it is something that has been of intense interest to our club since its founding. And we are very pleased to announce that we have developed a comprehensive and structured approach to achieving conversational head copy proficiency. And I'll speak to it in detail in the academic portion of this presentation.
All right, speed. CW speed. How fast is fast enough? You know, well, we have a lot of people joining the club, you know, really even me included. Everyone, it seems like everybody wants to get a little bit faster. But how fast is fast enough? You know, you can have beautiful QSOs at 7, 8, 9. I just had a QSO on the club, on the event station, and we were going at about 9, 10 words a minute. And I had a wonderful QSO with this guy. And then he said he had to go. And then I heard him calling CQ again. So I came back to him with my own call sign so I could get him again. But anyway, another story. But you can go. I have most of my QSOs around 18 to 20 words a minute. But you know, a lot of times I'll operate SKCC QSOs. And I'm having a lot of good time at 15 words a minute. You can go slower. You can go faster. I think Howard operates around 20. He likes 24 words a minute, and we'll ask Mike later how fast he likes to go. But you know, it's really just a personal thing. We have classes in our club that'll take you from wherever you're at up to what we call QRQ, which is a high speed, and we have operators in our club that can operate over 30, 35, 40 words a minute. So we have classes to do that if you want to do that. I myself don't have the desire to go that fast. I use CW. For me, it's more relaxing to go at 18 to 20. Everyone's got their own speed that they want. So how do you get faster? As I explained, we have classes that take you wherever you want to go. We have beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and we have super advanced as well. Howard, do you want to say anything about the speed?
So what is speed? A lot of people worry about that and feel that they have to, you know, increase their speed and keep pushing themselves. It's really not important. There's plenty of QSOs on the air between 13 and 18 words a minute, and you'd have a lot of people to contact. When you start going up higher, and I'm not talking about contesting or special events, you know, or sprints. If you're going to start sending CQs above 20 words a minute, you might be lonely. So I wouldn't worry about it. Now, what speed do I like and why? Jim said 24. Well, it is 24. Why isn't it 25? Why isn't it 22? 24 words a minute to me is still the speed where the CW is in my subconscious mind. I don't have to concentrate. I can still take a phone call and listen. I can balance my checkbook and listen, or I could read the Time magazine and still know what's going on. As a matter of fact, at 24 words a minute, I know what the guy's going to say even before he says it. So that's comfortable for me. When you start going up higher than that speed, it's in a different part of your brain, and you really got to concentrate 100%. And if you're sitting listening to a QSO at 35 words a minute, you're going to be tired after 20 minutes. And when I go on the air, I like to stay for a couple hours. I don't want to be exhausted right away. So speed is relative, and please don't get hung up that if you're not sending very fast that you're not going to be happy or you're not going to be a good operator. Okay. Challenges. Well, I like this image. Jim populated our presentation with a lot of cool images, and if anybody knows this Star Trek image, it's from the Kunit Caliphate, where Kirk has to battle Spock over another woman. And it's called the Challenge. That Kunit Caliphate in Klingon is Challenge. So that's the background. It probably doesn't mean much to anybody here, but it means something to us. And that's why the picture is there. So challenges. We're going to talk now about overstudy, copy skill, plateauing, sending, and Jim's favorite, well, it's my favorite expression from him. He was in the Air Force, and he talked about expectation management, and I thought it was a very cool thing to put in our presentation. So we have it. Jim?
All right, I'm going to go over a few things that a lot of students experience as they're learning CW. Overstudy is one. We get a lot of really motivated people coming in to learn CW, and sometimes they might be a little over-motivated, and we don't want you to overdo it. Because if you overdo it, you're going to burn yourself out, and then you might say, hey, this isn't worth it. We have to remember that this is a hobby, and we're doing this because it's fun. There's a whole lot of websites out there, and you can have 50 apps on your phone, and you could have 20 websites you go to, and those are all wonderful resources, and we encourage students to use them. But we don't want you to overuse them. You could be up all night doing these things. We recommend a certain amount of time a day to study, and just not to push it too hard. Everyone's a little different. Some can push harder than others, but you just have to keep in mind not to push it too hard. You got to give your brain some time overnight to rest, to absorb all the things that you've done. Also, we don't want you to forget your goal. We've had some students get to the point to where they got so obsessed with a certain computer program or an app on their phone for studying CW that's all that they focused on, and it almost became a distraction to what their ultimate goal was actually to get on the air. And we mentioned earlier, you don't need to be perfect to get on the air. You shouldn't be perfect to get on the air. On the air is where you should be perfecting your skills. So that's the overstudy dilemma, and those are some of the things that students run into. But we work through all these things. Okay, copy skill. Copying, of course, is a skill that you gain through practice. Some of the things that we see are mixing opposite characters. Now, a K is da da da, and an R is di da dit, completely opposite of each other. And same thing with a P and an X and a Y and an L. And a lot of times we'll get students that'll come up and come to me and say, hey, I'm mixing up these characters, and they want me to tell them how to fix it. And I actually get excited, and then I'm glad. And they say, why are you smiling? And I say, because your brain is finally starting to sort these things into categories. Yeah, they're wrong. It's a little bit wrong, but they're completely opposite. So at least it's knowing that these are similar in some way. So that's something that you work through just through practice and through hearing the code. Also, similar characters. There's a lot of characters, of course, that are off just by one dit or by one da. An example is an H and a 5. An H is dit, and a 5 is dit. So, imagine that coming at you a little quicker, and it's pretty quick. Same thing with a 6 and a B and a J and a 1. And really what happens is, you're learning a new language, and just like I took Spanish in high school, and a lot of people probably took a foreign language, and you got to learn the pronunciation, and you just got to get an ear for the language. And it's the same thing with CW. It'll sound kind of strange in the beginning, and things will sound the same, and you might mix up some of the opposite characters and this and that, but your ear will start to get trained, and you'll start to understand and be able to pull those things apart and tell the difference between those characters. So that's another issue that we work through with our new students.
All students experience learning plateaus. Learning CW is not linear. At first, progress is steady, but inevitably progress will begin to taper. Even short periods of regression are normal. The key is to learn how to learn CW and learn how to practice productively. Then it's just a matter of staying the course, doing the right things, and you will break through any and all learning plateaus.
Okay, so sending, that's another issue that we work through with new students. It's normal, you got to learn how to send. You got to get an ear for the character, and then once you learn it, then you got to figure out how to get it out through your hand to your wrist and onto the key. So inconsistency is an issue we deal with. When I say inconsistency, you want all your dits to be similar, and you want all your das to be similar. If you send a J, da da da, you want all those das to be the same equal measure. And also, it's something that you just work through just through practice, listen, your ear, and through practicing. And so sometimes we'll have students that will, I guess you could say, it's hard to say that I don't think anyone's ever complained that you send a da too long. But if you send a dit too long, then it sounds like a da, and then things start to get mixed up. So just through practice, we work out the sending the characters precisely and accurately. Also spacing. When I first learned, I think about the first time when I was in the second grade, I learned how to write with cursive. And I remember I wrote a letter to my mother, and I didn't put it. It was one long string. I forgot the part where you're supposed to separate the letter or the words, right? So, and it's the same thing with CW. You can be listening to CW, and if someone doesn't put some spaces in there, and you're copying down maybe what they're writing, it's just going to be one long string of letters, and you got to go back and try to figure out where the words are. So we tell students and try to teach students. We don't try. We do teach students that you have to think that you're putting a space where space belongs, and you got to put that space in there. There's a little bit of space between letters and a word, and there's a little bit more space between words. And through practice, that works out. And so it's really important to put that spacing through there. Sometimes when I'm in a nice QSO that's going on for a while, I'll tap my. I play the bass, and a lot of times I'll tap my foot just while I'm sending, just to keep it smooth. And then I'll tap my foot in between words, and I won't send anything. I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it, but that's just something that I do because I want to make sure I make it. We're communicators. We're not broadcasters. We want to be able to get our message across. So whatever I can do to make the message easier for the receiving party to receive, I want to do it. So that's why spacing is really important. And then in our photo here, we have a picture from a World War II a training video for Morse code, and they brought out this gigantic hand, and it's made out of wood, and they call it the wooden fist. And what that's pertaining to is that if you get nervous and you're tense, it's like you got a wooden fist. And whenever your hand is tense, there's no, your wrist needs to be flexible, and you need to relax. And if your hand is really tense, you're not going to be able to send very well. I know I rode a motorcycle for years, and when I'm nervous on my motorcycle, my arms are tense, and every little bump in the road translates right up into my body, and everything that I do goes right to the bike. And it's the same thing with a wooden fist. You got to relax, and it's not just for sending. You'll send better when you're relaxed, but when you're relaxed, you'll also copy better. Whenever you're tense, and it's normal to be a little bit tense when you're first learning, it's harder to copy and it's harder to send. Hence, what we try to do in our classes by keeping them fun, keeping it light, and actually just having fun in the class. It brings down the tension level so much. We laugh together, we learn to get to know each other, and that helps us copy, and it helps us send better too. Okay, expectation management. Howard likes this. This is something in the Air Force that we practiced all the time. It became, certain things come and go, become key phrases. But I think it's really pertinent here. As I've been teaching over the years, there's many times when I've had students call me aside and want to meet with me on Zoom at another time, one-on-one, and just say, hey, Jim, I don't think I'm where I need to. I don't think I'm getting it. I think this isn't for me. I think I should be learning faster. I don't think things are going as fast as they should be. And I'll sit down with them and I'll say, you've been taking classes for this long. You can already do this. And after we go through everything, they were always right where they needed to be. They had higher expectations of themselves and where they should be than what was realistic. So as it says in the slide, I told them it doesn't happen overnight. We have to practice this every day, just a little bit every day. You don't need to kill yourself, but you got to be patient. As Howard mentioned earlier, it's a language. And you're not going to go take you're not going to take two classes of Spanish and be able to go out and speak Spanish. You know, you have to take time to practice it. You have to take time to pronounce it, and you got to figure out how the sentence structure works. And that all comes through practice. So I like to say slow and steady wins the race. I think the tortoise said to the hare, something like that. And above all, if you're pushing yourself too hard and you're expecting too much of yourself, you're not having fun. And it's important that if you're not having fun, I've had classes where you see it in their face and everyone's gritting their teeth, and I have to step back and say, okay, everybody, shake it off. And I say, remember, this is a hobby. We're here to have fun. So let's all have fun. Howard, what do you think about this expectation management slide?
Well, you said it very well, Jim. And, you know, a lot of people put demands on themselves and makes themselves nervous. I mean, if you're going to do that to yourself while learning CW, you might as well watch Netflix. You know, you're here to have fun and to relax. And we have, you know, structured the club to be able to help you to get there. I did want to say a couple of words on sending, just to tell you some of the hints that we give beginning students on how to send better. Usually the first mistake that students will make when they first send Morse code, it's a little choppy. So their dashes are not as long as they should be. So how do you cure that? So let's say you have, like Jim said, a J, which is da-da-da-da. That last dash might be a little choppy because they don't really hear it any better. So we tell them to hang on to the last dash. Da-da-da-da. And if you send like that, even on the air, nobody's going to think that there's anything wrong with it. It actually sounds good. And it tells the other person's brain that that's the end of the letter. So that's a little bit of a hint. And then spacing is very important. So I could talk like this and say, my name is Howard. Or I could talk like this, my name is Howard. On CW, if you send like that, my name is Howard, it gives the other person's mind the ability to copy. And that's another trick. So don't rush, you know, and don't be upset, and don't push yourself. You got to relax. Okay, what do we got next, Jim?
Before I move on to the next slide, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a chance to say this, but I just want to let everyone know what you go through in learning, it's really worth it. I've tried every mode in ham radio, not every mode, but I've tried most modes in ham radio. There's too many. But I have so much fun with Morse code, and I just want everyone to know that you can have a lot of fun with Morse code. For me, it's the most fun. It's every QSO, it feels like an accomplishment. And I've gotten to know, I got to know Mike through Morse code. We never spoke, you know, for a long time. It was all through Morse code. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Next slide is we're going to talk about the training program.
Yeah, let me make an introduction here because I know Mike doesn't like to talk about himself, which I respect. But I want to tell you about this man. We were operating the club for about 3 years, and we weren't entirely satisfied with the success rate of getting our beginners to the intermediate. And we figured we had to revamp the entire curriculum. I didn't really have the ability to do it, and Mike took it upon himself to rewrite it. Now, he has a lot of training in this because he's right now the #1 FedEx pilot internationally, and he used to write the training manuals for FedEx, so he had that background, so he volunteered to do this. So Mike, believe it or not, he researched all the documents that could be found on the internet for CW. Now, a lot of these are old, and some of them go back to 1910, and some of them were done by Koch. If you heard about everybody talking about the Koch method, that was all in German. We had it translated, and it wasn't translated perfectly. And he sat through and read pages and pages of all of these historical documents. We had one from 1944. The Army hired a guy named Taylor, who was a psychologist. And back then, they had to crank out a lot of Morse code operators in World War II, and they were having a 50% fail rate. So they were looking at ways to increase it. So we read every single thing. He did. I didn't. And he came and wrote a curriculum for us with the help then of a fantastic amount of other members from the club and committee. And we're really grateful to Mike. So everything that he's going to talk to you about is brand new. And nobody that I know of has rewritten any way to teach Morse code in the past 40 years before we did it again last year. So, Mike, I hope I didn't embarrass you, but it has to be said. You know, please tell the group here about what you did or what we're doing now.
Thank you, Howard. Okay. Our club academics reflect our club's underlying culture. Our interactions with our students are respectful and positive, and we try and foster an optimum learning environment. Our club academics directly support our club's mantra of preparing our students to get on the air. But we also support broader objectives, such as having fun and socializing and building friends and bonds around shared interests and goals. We work hard at developing optimum teaching methods, and we invest heavily in our instructor training and evaluation programs to make sure our students have a consistent learning experience across all of our tracks. We have 138 classes a week, and to give our students the best opportunity for success. We only select instructors with a high degree of empathy for their students, and this creates a unique and strong bond, and it imbues the club membership with a desire to volunteer and give back. We call that our secret sauce. We strive for academic excellence, but the way we judge our success is by how well we prepare each of our students to achieve their goals to the best of their potential. And speaking of goals, we recommend that our students adopt these. First, to learn how to learn CW, and that is significantly different than just learning CW. Next, how to practice productively, not just putting in time, but making quantifiable progress, and learning how to progress, how to get faster, how to get better, how to achieve higher level learning objectives. And finally, doing all of this while having fun. So, let's begin with learning how to learn CW. As Howard mentioned, we read a host of historical documents, and of particular interest was the 1936 report by Ludwig Koch from Leipzig, Germany. If I were to characterize that report, it's that CW characters should be learned as single acoustic sounds and not by reference to a visual chart, which Koch referred to as the analytic method. And Koch developed several innovative techniques to amplify the acoustic nature of the CW sounds. For example, he would play the CW sounds without telling his students what character they were associated with. And he would ask his students to mark a piece of paper with a dot every time they heard the CW sound. So for example, he would play did audit, dot, did audit, dot. And it wasn't until that character sound familiarity was firmly established would Koch tell his students, did audit is an R. And from then on, his students would say and write the letter R. Now, we thought that was innovative and highly effective, and so we adopted the Koch method of character introduction into our beginner's curriculum. And this concept of establishing character sound familiarity is something you're going to hear quite a bit of in this presentation. Koch experimented extensively with character speed. A full third of his report is dedicated to it. Koch found that characters needed to be sent at a minimum of 10 words a minute to be heard as a single acoustic sound, what he referred to as gestalt. And he zeroed in on 12 words a minute as optimum for initial learning of CW. Now, that wasn't his goal. Koch wanted to get his students to 20 words a minute, but the Koch method is to establish proficiency at 12 words a minute and then ramp to 20. And we thought that was awfully consistent with our club mantra of preparing students to get on the air, because the vast majority of initial contacts are in that 12, 13 word per minute range. So we adopted Koch's recommended 12 words per minute for initial learning of CW. Koch provided significant guidance for how a sequence of characters to learn Morse code should be created, which characters shouldn't be put together, and where the difficult characters should be distributed from beginning to end. And we adopted all of those recommendations, and then we built our own character sequence based on the QSO protocol. And for those of you that don't know, the QSO protocol is how we communicate in CW. And the more often a character appears in the QSO protocol, the earlier in our character sequence they are placed. And this allows us to integrate QSO protocol and QSO abbreviations into the beginner's carousel. And what that really means is, as you're learning your CW characters, you're also learning to communicate in CW. So, now that we have introduced the characters, and no more than 3 characters in any one lesson as per Koch's guidance, we ask our students to send those new characters on a straight key. And in the absence of a straight key, we ask them to verbalize those characters in what we call code talking. This is a fascinating exercise because it is a window into the mind of our students, because we have found the way the students send the characters or verbalize the characters is exactly how they're hearing the character. So if we ask them to send an R and we hear dit, da, and dit, well, then we know they're still hearing this as separate elements, and we'll continue to work with the student until we hear did-audit, a single acoustic sound, gestalt. Once we are confident that the students are hearing the characters as single acoustic sounds, we transition into our character familiarization model. Now, our club believes that character sound familiarity is the foundation of recognition or copy. And our approach is to have our students take as long as needed to establish the character sound familiarity before we transition them into recognition. And here we employ the club's Morse practice page. This is a powerful web-based cross-platform trainer that has our curriculum and our teaching methods very tightly integrated. And in the character sound familiarity exercises, the Morse practice page does all the work. All our students need to do is sit back, relax, and assume a loose focus. And the Morse practice page will tell the student what they're going to hear, R, and then it'll play did-audit, 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 R, did-audit, did-audit, did-audit. Most students only need a few minutes of this. Some might need a few hours. It doesn't matter. We just ask our students to take as long as needed in a relaxed atmosphere until the sound of that character automatically conjures up the associated letter in their mind. When that happens, we ask them to transition to familiarity. And here, the Morse practice page turns the exercise around. Now it plays the CW character, and our students are asked to recognize it and verbalize it before the practice page voices it. We call it beat the computer. That's how we introduce characters. We ensure they're being heard as single acoustic sounds. We establish character sound familiarity, and then we reinforce it with familiarization. So now let's take a look at the curriculum format. When we were building this curriculum, and by the way, thank you, Howard, but I had a lot of help with a great team. And we studied training programs from all around the world. And every program that we studied was linear in nature. In other words, It started at a beginning or a reset with just a few characters, and then every subsequent lesson built on that body of characters. Now, from an educational standpoint, that's very effective. But from a practical and scheduling standpoint, it means that if you don't start at the beginning or near the beginning, well, it's easy to become overwhelmed, and that can be demotivational. Our students are highly motivated when they join the club, and they want to start learning CW right away. They don't want to wait 2 or 3 months for a class to reset. So we developed the carousel concept. The beginner's curriculum is comprised of 3 carousels, and each carousel can be thought of as a group of standalone lessons. The carousels go round and round. Students jump on the carousel whenever they like, they come off the carousel whenever they wish, and they progress whenever they feel they're ready. The carousel concept accommodates a broad range of student performance and student experiences. Fast learners or students with previous CW experience, they zip right through the carousel. Students that are wanting a more relaxed approach to learning CW, they can take 2 or more rotations of each carousel. It's totally flexible and highly effective. Carousel 1 is comprised of 6 lessons where we introduce the first 18 characters with a broader objective here of learning how to learn CW. Carousel 2 has 9 lessons where we introduce the next 26 characters, and we carry forward the 18 from Carousel 1 with a broader objective of learning how to practice productively. And Carousel 3 is completely devoted to getting our students on the air. The 5 Carousel 3 lessons directly support the 5 weekly Get on the Air activities. And each of those activities is instructor-led, and an instructor guides our students by the hand so they can get on the air in a low-stress and low-anxiety environment, thus fulfilling our mantra of preparing our students to get on the air. So, now that our students are proficient at 12 words a minute with an on-air presence, it's time to transition into our intermediate curriculum. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a comprehensive and structured approach to achieving higher speed telegraphy and conversational head copy proficiency. We begin in Intermediate 1 by leveraging the skills and the knowledge coming out of the beginner's carousel. But here we diverge from the scripted and formulaic type of QSO exchanges common in Carousel 3. And we begin to focus on more free-form communication we call fluency and fluidity, the goal being the effective communication without reference to a script. And the key here, as with all higher-level learning objectives, is to assume a loose focus or laid-back copy where we allow the code to come to us. Once we've established fluency, we transition into Intermediate 2. And in my opinion, this is where the magic begins. We begin to increase speed. Now recall the Koch method was to establish proficiency at 12 words a minute and then ramp to 20. Well, this is where the ramp begins. And the way we increase speed is the same exact way that we introduced characters, through character sound familiarity. Except here, we're not becoming familiar with new characters, we're becoming familiar with characters we already know, but at ever-increasing speeds, while at the same time decreasing the interval between when the character is heard and when it is recognized. The goal being the quick, the accurate, and the effortless copy of code. We call that instant character recognition, or ICR. And just as important as ICR is IER, or instant error recovery, which is the ability to miss a character or word and not have it negatively affect subsequent copy. Okay, once a sufficient level of ICR and IER is achieved, now we can begin the journey into head copy. And that begins by learning to assemble characters into words in our mind in what we call the recognition buffer. This is highly individualistic. Some people, like Howard, they see characters on our ticket tape. Other people see characters and words on a blackboard. Most of us don't see anything, but we learn to hold those characters and words in our mind's eye. And Intermediate 2 is chock full of highly effective demonstrations, techniques, and exercises designed to build the mental process and associated buffers with word building. Once we have sufficient word building skills, we can transition into Intermediate 3, where the focus now shifts to retention. And that's the meaning or the gist of what is being said. This is easily the most misunderstood learning objective in head copy, because many people erroneously equate this with memorization. It is not memorization. It's what we're doing right here, right now. You're not writing everything down that I'm saying, and you're sure not trying to memorize everything that I'm saying, but hopefully, at the end of this conversation, you will retain those things that are of importance or meaning to you. And that is the essence of conversation. So, once our students have achieved proficiency at 20 words a minute in conversational head copy, we can make a seamless transition into our advanced curriculum, which continues the pursuit of conversational head copy at ever-increasing speeds. Our Advanced 1 in a range from 20 to 25 words a minute, our Advanced 2 from 25 to 35 words a minute, with focus at 28, which is a very popular higher speed QSO speed. And then our Advanced 3, QRQ, takes us from 35 to 45 words per minute plus. And at those speeds, character by character copy becomes less and less feasible, and we begin to explore alternate means of copy, such as instant word recognition and phonic copy. And that is an overview of LICW academics. Now Howard and Jim will tell you more about our club.
Thank you very much for that detailed explanation, Mike. And we're just going to spend a few minutes on going over what our club is all about. We have been in existence for 5 years, and as of today, we have 5,000 members, over 5,000, and we have 138 classes per week on Zoom. That's per week. So we have a lot of teachers and a lot of people behind that, and this is a little bit outdated already. We have 58 countries, and we also teach kids. We've taught over 500 kids CW since COVID started, and many have gotten their licenses, and we have now 10 kids classes per week. So it's very important for the young people to learn Morse code to keep this going, and that's why Yanni here from Romania, 212 words per minute, is amazing. Okay, what do we got next, Jim? Okay, so how is the club structured? To have fun with CW, we have to make it fun. So besides teaching the rote learning classes, just about every day we have forums like this with outside speakers coming in, talking about all different types of subjects. So on Monday night, we have something called Radio and Related Technology, where we have presentations just about on anything. This week coming up, we have somebody talking about cycle 25, our current sunspot cycle. So that's an example. And they could be talking about antennas or just anything of interest. Wednesday night, we have a CW Makers class where they actually build kits together and talk about QRP kits. On the weekends, we have antenna forums. During the week, we have like a doctor's in class where you can ask any type of question that's on your mind about ham radio, and we have experts running that. So to make the whole club fun besides running CW, we have these classes and forums all during the week. Yeah, this is a listing of some of the forums and some of the subject matters we've had. We'll keep going. Okay, this is an important thing I want to spend a minute on. One of the most important tenets of the club is what are we doing for people that are not as fortunate as the majority of us. So we developed, through the leadership here of Bob W06W right in the front, a haptic vibrational CW device that gives vibrations of CW to the palm of your hand. This is a patent-pending device, and we took this very seriously. So if you're having any hearing problems, and Lord knows that many of us at our age are, if you use the haptic device and keep your hand on it, you'll get the same vibrations that are coming over your radio speaker or your computer at the same time to your hand, and it helps your learning process. And I'm very proud to say that yesterday we were contacted by somebody who is 100% deaf and not a ham, and he got one of these units from us, and he's going to be using it to learn Morse code. So to me, this is more important. What are we doing for people like that than how many more members we're taking in or how many classes we're doing per week? We have a lot of blind people in our club, and our entire website and many things that we do has been changed to be accessible. We've taught autistic students, and if you look on our website, you'll see a very inspiring video of a young man who could not speak to his mother. So they both learned CW together, and now they communicate to each other. It really warms your heart. YLs. We have over 300 women in our club now. Many of them have leadership positions and are senior members and instructors. I'm delighted about this because I thought when we first started, I'd be lucky if we got 50. That was my goal, and now we're pushing over 300. So I think it's wonderful, and I thought that the women would want to be in separate classes and be more protected. That's the way I was thinking. But because of the way we structured our club to be a safe place, they don't want to be in their own classes. And they're right in the mainstream with everybody, and I think it's wonderful. Okay, so you've survived our entire presentation. I know it's a little bit long, and we have one video we want to play here. So besides being a Star Trek fan, people who know me know I'm a Three Stooges fan. If you haven't seen this one, this would be an example of what we'll do to our students if they're not paying attention.
Short wave. Take it down, quick. What's it say? Ah, shut up. What'd that mean? You too?
I love this, you know. I could see this. Now, the CW is real. It's in 5-letter groups without vowels, and it's a perfect 1930s fist with that accentuation of the last dash that I told you about. It's wonderful. So if you find that on YouTube or you come to our website, you can take a look at it. What's that? There is no message. It's 5-letter groups of consonants. That's all, you know? So something like you'd be receiving in, you know, World War II, something like that. But it's perfect. So that's our presentation. Thank you for sitting through it. I know it's a little hot in here, but the most important thing that we like after the presentation is to do Q&A. And if you have any questions or any comments, we'd love to hear from it, and we'll stay as long as you want. And you know, if you have to go elsewhere, we'll understand. We'll always hold it against you. But if you'd like, if you'd like to ask a question.